Hey there, kids. Mr. Ta here, and today I want to talk to you guys about going from retelling a story to summary of a story. This is a big fourth grade skill, so it might take some practice here. So, what do I mean by retelling versus summarizing? Well, to retell means to tell the story again that you've just read using the author's words and adding as many details as possible. And a lot of you guys already know how to do that really well. To summarize, though, is a little bit more advanced. It's when you try to think and tell only the most important events from the story, and you put those events in your own words, and you're always keeping in mind the big idea about what the story is mostly about, the thing that the author is trying to tell us. Both of them use details from the text and they keep the details in the correct order, but summarizing requires a little bit more work from the reader. So we're going to practice that today. So today we are learning to retell, which is what you already know how to do, chronologically, which means in order, and also to go back to summarize or combine the earlier parts that relate to the part that we've just read. Why are we doing this? Well, I want to tell you about what we know. There's this famous scientist that studied kids and the way they read. His name was Richard Allington, and he studied how children read and what they need to be strong readers. And this is what he found out about children that are now reading chapter books, which is a lot of you guys right now in fourth grade are reading chapter books. So chapter books readers should be able to read books like Stone Fox, which is a level P book. It's about 96 pages in about 90 minutes. That means that if you are reading for an hour a day, 25 minutes at school, 30 minutes in the evening for your own enjoyment, you could read 2 to 3 books like Stone Fox a week. That's because you're reading for about an hour each day. And in general, chapter book readers should be able to read 15 pages in 20 minutes. You might be able to read a little bit more. You might be able to read a little bit less, but on average, this is what chapter book readers should be able to do. So you should look in your own reading journal and at your own reading habits. How's your reading pace? How are you doing? Are you taking care of, are you generally on this pace? So now that we've told you all that, I'm sure that it must seem like we teachers are asking you to read faster, that you have to read more. And actually, believe it or not, we're not saying that. What we've discovered is that readers, good readers, actually pause to retell parts of books that they've just read, and they go back to synthesize or combine earlier parts that relate to just that part. Sometimes when kids read and they're really into a book, or they just feel this need to read really fast. They just go through the entire book like a train, and they just go from beginning to end, and they don't stop. And actually, what we found out is that good readers do something else besides that. They don't read that way. They actually pause a little bit. So we're going to try to get you to go from retelling the story, where you tell all the important parts in order, to doing this thing called synthesizing, which is where you tell the most important parts, and then you recall how earlier events in the book relate to that part. So to really understand that, we've got 3 steps. First, after you read a chapter, pause. Pause reading. Just stop for a second before you move on. 2, retell yourself what you just read. 3, think about earlier parts of the book that relate to what you just read, what we call synthesize. So again, pause, retell, think back. So we're going to practice this together by retelling the events that happen in chapter 6 of The Tiger Rising. And then we're going to see if we can synthesize and connect it to things that we know about the book from the other parts that we've read. So, first one. Rob went through the school day happily, excited that he was going to be free from school for a while. At lunchtime, he avoided the cafeteria, knowing that Norton and Billy Threemonger would be there. Hey, wait! He avoided the cafeteria knowing that Norton and Billy Threemonger would be there. That's because he was bullied by Norton and Billy Threemonger on the bus. He doesn't want to see them there. I'm synthesizing that and I'm connecting that. Great. Good job. Let's try that again. The second thing he does is Rob sat on the bench outside the lunchroom studying his drawing of the tiger when suddenly the cafeteria door swung open and Sistine marched out, followed by some rowdy kids. Rob wanted to tell her to run away from the bullying, but he was silent. He wanted to tell her to run away from the bullying because he doesn't run away from bullies. He just sits and he takes it. We saw that happen in the bus. That's right. That's called synthesis. And that's what we're doing. We're connecting to previous events in the past. Great job. Third one, Rob watched Sistine turn back into the crowd and begin to fight the bullies. She turns back into the crowd because Sistine is really tough. She comes in the first part in class, remember? And she says that she hates she hates the South and that everyone's ignorant and she's going to leave anyway. So she's really super tough. That's right. You see, what we're doing, kids, is that we're taking these parts of the book that we see and that we've just read and connecting them to parts that we've seen in the past. This is the sort of work that we're expecting you to do when you retell and you synthesize, so that way you have a greater understanding and appreciation of what's going on in the book. So don't let this stuff go past you, because it will really, really affect your enjoyment of the book if you don't see this stuff. Here, you try it. After Rob noticed the kids ganging up on Sistine, he stood up, surprised himself, and shouted at the kids. How is that connected to what we've seen in the past? Go on, you can tell your teacher. If you want to pause, teachers, you do so now. Great. You saw that he surprised himself by shouting at the kids, because you know that Rob doesn't do that. His whole attitude is that when you get bullied, you just sit and take it. So the fact is that he stood up and shouted at the kids means something weird is going on inside him, that he would do that instead of his normal thing. That's synthesis. So remember, when so much is happening in your book, it's a great time to pause reading after you finish a chapter, retell yourself what you just read, and think back about earlier parts of the book to relate to what you just read or synthesize. You try that in your online reading response journals. Until next time, I'm Mr. Ta.